What's going on, YouTube? In America, people tend to think that bigger is better, and when it comes to mid-sized three-row SUVs, automakers have obliged. If you're one of the people looking for the absolute biggest options, three names are at the top: the refreshed 2024 Volkswagen Atlas, the all-new Toyota Grand Highlander, and the Chevy Traverse. The Traverse is very old and the new model has not been released yet, so today we're going to compare the two new models you can buy right now. So which one is not only the king of space, but also the king of all things family and luxury? Let's go ahead and find out. Now, like always, let's quickly establish the pricing and trim levels right from the start. Beginning with the extensively refreshed Volkswagen Atlas, we have the SEL Premium R-Line trim, which is fully loaded. The only extra to add is the destination charge, so the total rings in at $53,725. Now moving on to the all-new Grand Highlander, because it's available in a lot more versions than the Atlas, expect to spend more. The very top version would almost be $60,000, but for this comparison, we are using the limited Hybrid Max, which is much closer to the Atlas's price tag. With this second from the top model, we have a price tag of $55,800. Now this is going to be an objective comparison. We have done our best to weigh the points awarded throughout in major and minor categories, but at the end of this comparison, we will sum up with our thoughts and revisit the approximately $2,000 price difference for a value assessment. With that being said, let's get into this comparison. When the Atlas was first introduced in 2018, it came out with a really boxy design that was reminiscent of the full-size SUVs of the time. It was ahead of its time because many mid-size SUVs have headed in that direction as well, like the new Grand Highlander. The Atlas has updated its front design for 2024, but retains the same kind of boxy feel to it, including up front. Highlander has a chrome strip across the top that connects the grille into the headlights, but the Atlas chose a light bar and lighted logo instead. And speaking of lighting, we have projector LED headlights on both models, but only the Atlases are adaptive, and only the Grand Highlander has fog lamps. Moving to the side, the Atlas previously had a big advantage in size over the Highlander, but not so with this Grand Highlander. This completely distinct product is now about an inch longer overall. And, like I said at the beginning, they are some of the largest options in the class, both on the outside and the inside, as you'll see later. Design-wise, we have 20-inch alloy wheels on the Grand Highlander, and very large 21-inch alloys on the Atlas. Heading out back, the boxy designs continue, and as far as other features, they are very similar with exposed wipers, chrome and black accents, and fully LED taillights. One difference is that the Grand Highlander has exposed chrome-tipped exhaust outlets instead of faux ones on the Volkswagen. Both can tow up to 5,000 pounds. Now checking out some of the individual features, both of their mirrors have heating, blind spot monitoring, power folding, and projector puddle lamps. Safety is of course very important, so you're going to want more than just blind spot monitoring, which is why both are including forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection, adaptive cruise control with stop and go, lane keeping assist, and auto high beam headlights. Basic warranty coverage is going to be longer in the VW, but powertrain coverage is going to be longer in the Toyota. That being said, being comfortable and having accommodations for the whole family inside the cabins is even more important than the exteriors. So let's get into that, but first,
if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
Now whatever you remember about the Atlas's cabin, forget it, because it has changed a ton. The key fob is already hinting at that as we walk up, because it has a new premium design. It also has remote start built in, whereas the Grand Highlander will require a subscription after the trial period ends. Opening up the doors, we are greeted with cabins that are clearly designed to maximize functionality and technology. As far as the seats themselves, both models have 10 ways of power adjustment, heating, ventilation, and memory. They are diamond stitched in the Atlas, and a leather and suede combo in the Grand Highlander. Once we fully climb inside, we can get into the overall material quality. The Atlas previously had a pretty cheap feeling cabin, but this new model dispels of that, with nice soft touch plastic, stitched leatherette, and a very realistic faux wood trim. That surpasses the Grand Highlander, which has a hard touch upper dash, and gray trim, which I think is trying to mimic carbon fiber. After startup, you'll see digital gauge clusters on both with crisp graphics. But only our Atlas has a head-up display, because it's reserved for the Platinum Grand Highlander. Both of them have rain-sensing wipers and heated, manual adjusting, leather-wrapped steering wheels. Even with the extra emphasis on luxury both of them have, they are really focused on utility. As far as center consoles, even though the opening is smaller on the Grand Highlander, it's even deeper than in the Atlas. And both have large front bins with wireless phone charging pads. Where they differ is the fact that the Atlas has a sensor pass-through, and the Grand Highlander has a passenger storage shelf for additional storage. Overall, we judge this point category to be a tie. Moving to the shifters, both brands have shifted to small electronic ones. And both models have 360-degree camera systems when in reverse. Electronic parking brakes are on board, but for whatever reason, Volkswagens in the States don't have brake hold for red lights. Now, as we come to the climate controls, there are some pretty big differences to note. Not in the fact that they both have 3-zone automatic climate, but that the Toyota has large physical knobs, and the Volkswagen has adopted a touch capacitive slider system. While it was pretty responsive in our day of testing, there's no denying that it takes more focus to hit the slider, and that the rest of the climate controls are in a separate menu. And speaking of knobs, the same goes for the audio system, although both of course have buttons on the steering wheel as well. Overall, the Volkswagen's Harman Kardon sound system has the more well-rounded quality versus the bass-heavy JBL system in the Toyota. Now it's time to take a look at these screens, where both models now have 12-inch screens. Additionally, they are operating on the latest version of each brand's software, so performance and graphics are snappy. Features-wise, both have integrated navigation systems and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Last but certainly not least, for the front of the interiors, both models have auto-dimming rearview mirrors, home-link remotes, and large panoramic sunroofs. But heading to the rear spaces, this is where these two really get to battle it out for the largest space possible in the midsize segment. Starting with the second rows, both dimensions are slightly under the 5% threshold to get a point. Although, as you can see, the Atlas has a small advantage in headroom, and the Grand Highlander has a small legroom advantage. Now, what kind of features do we have in the back? Well, tons of them, even for the pickiest passengers, such as rear climate controls, vents, USB ports, household power outlets, sunshades, and the seats themselves are heated. The Toyota also offers ventilated rear seats, but only on the Platinum trim, not this limited. Both models also offer the choice between bench seating and captain's chairs. Let's head to the next row of seats. Access to the third rows is very easy, and as far as space, these two are neck and neck. Both are offering over 33 inches of legroom, which is fantastic for this class, and really any kind of SUV out there. Headroom is also good, even for adults. The big difference here is seating capacity. Whereas the Grand Highlander can seat 3 back here for a maximum capacity of 8 passengers, the Atlas can only handle 2 in the way back, even though the width seems like it could fit it. Nevertheless, having room for an extra passenger could be an important point for a lot of you guys. Moving out back, both have hands-free power tailgates, and once they open up, you will find the single biggest advantage both these two have over other rivals, like Pilot and Telluride. They both exceed those already large models by over 10 cubic feet maximum, and, as you can see from the specs displayed on the screen, they nearly match each other at each of the 3 seating configurations. To reiterate, they are both absolutely massive. Neither of them have power folding third rows or handles to fold the second row from the cargo areas. But once you do that, the low floors are completely flat. Additional storage and spare tires are located below the floor, and the Grand Highlander also has a powerful 1500 power outlet back here. That's it for the interiors, so now let's take this close fight to the streets. Before we get into what these two specifically perform like, I want to mention all the options you have. With the Grand Highlander, you have 3 powertrain choices: a traditional gas turbo 4-cylinder, a traditional hybrid, and a high-performance hybrid. This allows you to match the powertrain to whatever your priorities are, a very different approach from most rivals, including the Atlas. The Atlas for 2024 has moved exclusively to a 2-liter turbocharged i4 engine, which makes 269 horsepower. Our limited Grand Highlander has the Hybrid Max powertrain for this price, and that means it makes substantially more power, about 100 more horsepower and 125 pound-feet more torque. Obviously, that's a large performance discrepancy, and a big Grand Highlander advantage if you're a power-hungry person. Alright, and just like that, we're up to 60 miles per hour in the Grand Highlander. So even though this is a big gal, she can move when she has 362 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of power for this segment, for sure. So just to remind you guys from the spec dump, what this is a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. We have a front electric motor. We also have a rear e-axle. All that goes together to give you the power figures I just cited. All right,
yeah.
So that's up to 60 miles per hour. Up a hill, obviously, as you can see. And overall power feels pretty good. I certainly like that this new turbo has so much torque on board.
Yeah.
And a first observation is that it really actually sounds pretty quiet and refined as well.
Now, to be fair, that first acceleration was uphill, very much so. But this 2-liter actually has more torque than the previous V6. It does have less horsepower than the previous V6.
It's only 7 less horsepower.
Yes.
So as far as the other elements, torque and packaging requirements mean that the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max is actually rocking an old-school 6-speed automatic transmission, compared to an 8-speed in the VW. While the 6 is still smooth, the Atlas's is quicker and has more gears to choose from. Now, as far as other aspects of the powertrain, you do have an 8-speed automatic transmission. That's nice and smooth. It shifts through the gears really quickly when you put your foot down. You don't have to wait long to get several gears dropped. And a traditional 6-speed automatic as well as part of this powertrain. So it's a very interesting setup. Both models deliver power in a very refined manner for 4 cylinders, and sound is appropriately muted for these kinds of vehicles. Speaking of sound, let's talk about decibel readings. We took sound level readings while we were sampling them at press events, so unfortunately, the reading in the Atlas was tainted by poor road quality in upstate New York, even though the Hawaiian roads were quite smooth. So we've got a pretty flat, smooth area here to do a sound level reading. So let me turn on the climate here and let's give it a try.
All right.
All right, looks like we've settled at 55 decibels even.
All right, 56.5 is where we've settled in for this Atlas. Now, one thing I want to point out is that we are on a media drive. We're in New York State, so this is not our typical road that we test on.
The road sucks.
Yeah, this is not a great road, but we are looking forward to testing it back home. Hopefully Volkswagen will maybe loan us one of these Atlas models so we can do it on our home stretch and get our official sound level reading. But we wanted to give you that as a reference point.
Next up, let's discuss the ride qualities. They absorb all but the largest road imperfections, although that does mean that neither of them would classify as having tight body control. Steering is light, and neither offer much feedback.
Now, before we get any longer on in this drive, I do want to talk about this Atlas model's ride quality. This has always been an area where this car has excelled, and that's going to continue for 2024. Honestly, I believe this is one of the best riding options that you can get in the entire segment.
Now, while not a focus of this model, I do want to mention the driving dynamics. If you were thinking this was going to be a 3-row GTI,
no,
it's definitely not. Just like before the refresh, this is going to skew a lot more towards that comfort focus. So when you have that ride and handling balance, this is going to be really focused on ride quality, which is really demonstrated to us. We have phenomenal ride quality on board. Toyota has really emphasized this. Of course, you know, the regular Highlander is known for being so comfortable, so smooth. I'm happy to say that those same attributes carry on for the Grand Highlander as well. So this is a big SUV, and I'm not going to say you can't feel it. You definitely can feel it. As a matter of fact, I think Toyota has made this intentionally very soft for the ride quality purposes.
And lastly, for fuel economy, this is one of the coolest things about the Hybrid Max. Despite making big power, it still gets great fuel economy, beating the improved Atlas by 6 mpg combined. As promised, let's revisit the price difference of $1,995. Our scale indicates that we should award 1 point to the Atlas to represent that. But as always, I'll remind you that if money doesn't matter as much to you, then feel free to disregard this part. So there you have it. The objective winner is the all-new Toyota Grand Highlander. But now it's time to talk about who is your winner. The Atlas should be your winner if you prefer having more premium cabin finishes. The redesigned interior is elevated quite a lot over the previous model year. The Harman Kardon audio, I think, is a pretty big advantage over the JBL audio. You also have really stylish 21-inch alloy wheels, which do look better than what you get on the Grand Highlander. And you also do have a more affordable price tag. That, of course, depends a little bit on which version you choose. But as equipped, this one was coming in less expensive.
Yeah, I feel like the Atlas has a little bit more of a premium vibe than the Grand Highlander. But speaking of the Grand Highlander, you would pick that if you value the load of powertrain choices that you have. You have a hybrid, you have the Hybrid Max, you have 2 other powertrains that you can pick as well. You can get up to 34 miles a gallon with the hybrid model, 362 horsepower with Hybrid Max. You also have a higher seating capacity at 8-passenger versus 7-passenger, so if you need that extra seat, you're going to have to pick the Grand Highlander. And also, it is a Toyota after all, so you have a pretty good reliability with that. So that's certainly something to consider. But guys, that's going to be where we leave off on this comparison video between the all-new Grand Highlander and the refreshed Volkswagen Atlas. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, we would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, you help us to make more of these comparison videos, and you also are joining in to this Car Confections family, and we welcome you. Anyway, we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.